In this tutorial we are going to be learning how to crochet the Granny Love shawl. This is a great beginner project, and if you prefer written instructions, I'll link those in the description along with the yarn that I'm using. You can use any yarn you like for this shawl, but I'm going to be using 4 colours of a merino DK weight yarn and a 4.5mm crochet hook. Start by making a slip knot using your preferred method. This is how I like to make my slip knots. This twist I've just made is what I use instead of the knot. I'm then going to pinch it and I'm ready to do my starting chain. Start by making a chain of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now slip stitch in the first chain to make a ring. So my hook is going in that chain there. Doesn't really matter which loop of the chain you go in, just somewhere in that first chain. Then I'm going to make a slip stitch. So if we give this chain a bit of a wiggle around, you should be able to find the space at the middle of the chain ring, and that's where we're going to be making the first stitches of row 1. To start row 1, chain 3, 1, 2, 3. This counts as our first double crochet stitch. That's a double crochet in US terms. This stitch is called a treble if you prefer UK terms. I'm going to be using US terms for this tutorial. Now we're going to work 3 double crochets into this chain ring. So if you've not made a double crochet before, yarn over, put your hook into that hole at the center of the chain ring, so that space there. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Should now have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So that right there is a US double crochet. We're going to make 2 more of those into the chain ring. So that's our second double crochet and the third double crochet. So because we're including this starting chain, we're pretending that starting chain of 3 there is a double crochet. We've now made 4 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next we're going to make a corner space. So to do that, chain 2. 1, 2. Now make 4 double crochets back into the center of that chain ring. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've now finished row 1 and we're going to fasten off this colour. So to fasten off a colour, make 1 chain and then we're going to snip our yarn, leaving a tail long enough to weave in later. 5 or 6 inches is about okay. Then use your crochet hook to pull that yarn end through that chain we just made and give it a pull to tighten. We're now ready to join the next colour for row 2. For row 2, I'm going to be using the colour Champagne. So this is what row 1 looks like finished, and this is the front of the crochet. We're going to be turning at the end of every round. So I'm going to turn this piece of crochet over so that yarn I've just cut is on this side of the crochet, and the backs of the stitches. I'm looking at the backs of the stitches we just made. I know they're the backs because they're a bit bumpier than the front. The front looks a bit smoother. So now what I'm going to do to join the next colour is I'm going to put my hook between the first and the second stitches. So to do that, I'm going to pinch this first stitch and the second stitch and I'm going to pull, and that should reveal a space between the stitches. We're not going to be putting our crochet hook underneath the 2 loops at the top of the stitch, that V shape, like we usually do when we work crochet in rows. We're going to be working between the first and the second stitches here. So in there. And I'm going to take my yarn and leaving about a 5 or 6 inch tail to weave in later, I'm going to lay that yarn over the top of my crochet hook. Then I'm going to use my hook to pull a loop of yarn up between those stitches. So now I have a bit of a trick here that kind of locks that yarn temporarily in place until we can come back and weave this tail in later. There are quite a few tails to weave in for this pattern. So just to temporarily lock it into place, I'm going to lay this yarn tail over the top of my crochet hook like that, and then tuck it down there. And we're now going to pretend it's not there essentially, and it's going to get stuck in our starting chain, and it just gives a little bit of extra friction so it doesn't move as much until we can come back and weave the end in. Notice how I didn't knot my two ends together. I don't like knots in my crochet, they leave bumps, and I prefer my crochet to be smooth. As long as we're weaving these ends in properly, we don't need to knot when we change colour. I am going to cover weaving in ends later in this tutorial. I have some timestamps down here if you want to skip ahead to see how I'm going to do that. So next, make a chain of 3, ignoring that extra loop on our hook. So yarn over, pull through like that, and then do 2 more chains, 2, 3. So just like in row 1, this starting chain of 3 counts as our first double crochet stitch. We're now going to make 3 more double crochets in that same space between the first and the second stitch of the row below. So back into that space, I'm going to make 3 double crochets. So 1 double crochet, 2 double crochets, and 3 double crochets, all into that space there. So now we're going to skip the next 3 stitches. So skip, 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 and into this corner space, this chain 2 space here. We're going to work something called a corner group. If you've watched my granny square tutorials before, you know what's coming here. So the corner group in a granny square is 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. So that's what we're going to work into this chain 2 space. So I'll show you what that looks like. So we're first going to work those 3 double crochets. That's 1 and 2 and 3. Then I'm going to pull these stitches over a little bit like that, so I've still got space to go back into this chain 2 space for some more stitches. Next, chain 2, 1, 2, and then 3 more double crochets back into that same corner space, so back into that same space there. We're doing 3 more double crochets, so that's 1, 2, 3. So next we're going to skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to find the space between the last and the penultimate stitch. So I'm going to grab this last stitch here, which is actually our turning chain from row 1. I'm going to pull on that to find the space there. And into that space there, I'm going to work 4 double crochets. So I'm going in there between the stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's row 2 finished. I'm now going to fasten off exactly the same as we did at the end of row 1. So chain 1, snip the yarn leaving a long tail, use my crochet hook to pull that tail through the chain and give it a pull to tighten. We've now finished row 2 and we're ready to change colours again for row 3. For row 4, I'm going to use the colour Dusty Peach. So again, we're going to turn because we're turning at the end of every row in this pattern. And I'm going to find that space, that same space that we started off row 2 into. So that space between the first and the second stitch. So I grab this first stitch and the second stitch, pull them apart. That reveals a space. And into that space is where I'm going to put my crochet hook. And I'm going to get my next colour and lay it over the top of my crochet hook and pull up a loop. I'm then going to lay this yarn tail, if I can get it out, I'm going to lay this yarn tail over the top of my crochet hook and then tuck it down there out the way. And now we're going to ignore it, just like we did at the start of row 2. So to start row 3, make 3 chains, 1, 2, 3. This counts as your first double crochet stitch, and then we're going to work 3 more double crochets into that same space. So I'm crocheting in there. 1, 2, 3. So including that starting chain that counts as the first stitch, I've made 4 double crochets into the space between the first and the second stitch. Next we're going to skip the next 3 stitches, so skip, 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 and we have a space here between our 2 groups of 3 double crochet. In granny stitch patterns, these groups of 3 double crochets are sometimes called clusters, but I prefer to call them granny groups. So when I say granny group in this tutorial, I mean a group of 3 double crochet worked into the same space. So into this space here, I'm going to work 3 double crochets, so a granny group into that space. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to skip 3 stitches, skip, skip, skip. So my next space is a corner space. So in corner spaces, we work those corner groups of 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. The same as row 2. I'm sorry if I keep saying round instead of row. These are rows, not rounds. I just often do granny square tutorials on this channel, so I sometimes get round and row muddled up. So do excuse me if I make that mistake. So into this space here, work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Then chain 2, 1, 2, and then 3 more double crochets back into the same space. 1, 2, 3. There. If you've made a granny square before, you might think, oh, this is looking a bit familiar. That's because this pattern is essentially half a granny square. We've cut the granny square in half diagonally this way to create this shawl pattern. I'm just going to grab a granny square a second. So here's a granny square I made earlier, and if I fold this granny square in half this way, can you see the resemblance? So yeah, this shawl is essentially half a large granny square. So carrying on with row 3 after that little diversion, we're going to skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and into the next space, so that space there between the 2 granny groups, we're going to work another granny group, so 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. So now at the end of the row, and I've got 4 double crochets left, and I'm going to do exactly what we did at the end of row 2. We're going to work 4 double crochets between the last and the one before the last stitch. So in that space there, we're going to work 4 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to fasten off this colour again. So chain 1, snip the yarn, use your hook to pull the tail through, give it a pull to tighten. So that's the first 3 rows done, so let's move on to row 4. So for row 4 I'm going to be using the colour Antique Gold. So I'm going to go ahead and join this yarn exactly the same as we did at the start of row 2 and row 3. So as I do the instructions for row 4, I'm going to be showing you how to continue this pattern moving forwards to as many rows as you want your shawl to be. In the written pattern, we work 48 rows here, and we repeat these 4 colours in this same sequence. So copper, champagne, vintage peak, antique gold, and then we do copper, champagne, vintage peak, antique gold over and over again for those 48 rows. So start with that chain of 3 that counts as our first double crochet, then 3 more double crochets back into that same space. And we always do this at the start of each row, and at the end of each row we do 4 double crochets instead of 3 double crochets, because that 4th stitch here counts as an edging stitch and it just gives us somewhere to crochet there. So we always start with a group of 4 double crochets, well, because we count that starting chain, and at the end of every row we always have 4 double crochets in a group. All of the other groups of double crochets on our row, no matter how big it gets, are groups of 3 double crochet. So I'm going to look along here and I'm going to identify my next space. And if the next space is one that's along the side of the shawl and it's not in the corner, so it's a space along the side of the shawl with no chains above it and it's between 2 groups of 3 double crochets, in that space we always work 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, there. And we're going to repeat that along no matter how big our shawl gets. As our shawl gets bigger and bigger and bigger, we're going to be doing more and more of these groups of 3 double crochet along the side of our shawl. For this row we're doing 2 before we get to a corner space, the next row there will be 3, and so on, all the way up until row 48. So into the next space, it's not a corner space, so I'm going to work 3 double crochet into it. 1, 2, 3. Then my next space is a corner space, so we're going to work a corner group in there. So that's a group of 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, all into the chain 2 space. So in there. 1, 2, 3. Then chain 2, 1, 2, and then 3 more double crochets back into the corner space. 1, 2, 3. And then for this second side of the shawl, we're going to work 3 double crochets into each space until we don't have any more spaces left and we've just got this last group. So I'm working 3 double crochets into this space. 1, 2, 3. Then into the next space. 1, 2, 3. And then, just like I said earlier, our last group is going to be a group of 4 double crochets into the space between the last and the penultimate stitch. So in that space there, we're going to work 4 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then fasten off just like we did before. And then at the end of every row we turn over and we join our next colour between the first and the second stitch, and we repeat that formula over and over again until either the shawl is the size that you want it to be and you're ready to crochet on the border, or until you've done 48 rows. So if you are going to customize the size of your shawl but you want to use the same border as the one that's in this tutorial, you need to make sure that your total number of rows is an even number. Otherwise, the stitch count for the border will not work. It needs to be an even number of rows to get the right stitch count along the side of the shawl. So I am going to go ahead and add a few more rows onto this, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how we weave our ends in before we move on to the border. Use the timestamps below if you want to skip around. So I've just done another 4 rows, so 8 rows total, just so I can show you the border pattern for this tutorial and show you how to weave in these ends. I'm going to show you how to deal with ends quickly and easily, and most importantly securely, so they don't come loose with washing and with wearing. So to weave your ends in, I recommend grabbing yourself a needle, ideally one with a sharp point. It means your ends are more secure and it's way quicker and easier to weave your ends in than one like this that has a blunt point. So we're going to start off by dealing with this first end, because you can see we've got a bit of a hole here, so we can close up this hole. So I'm going to thread that tail onto my yarn needle, And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to work that yarn end underneath all of these stitches round in a circle, like this. So I haven't really left this end long enough, but I'm going round in a circle like that. And I'm going to go down here and round through those stitches there as well. Then pull the needle through and then pull on it quite tightly. I have to put my thumb over there, sorry you can't see, but you can see now we have closed up that hole there. So to make sure this is extra secure, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a thread here. I'm going to go back around in the opposite direction, and by working over the same area in an opposite direction with a sharp needle, that's how you secure your end in with no knots. So my end really is too short, it's coming out of the needle. There we go. Now I'm just going to do the same again. I'm going to go back in the opposite direction one more time. I usually do this 3 times across the same area, and then my ends never come loose, especially if I've used that sharp needle. But my end here really is too short. Okay, so now I've done that, I'm just going to give that a bit of a pull, and then I'm going to trim this end we've just woven in, and then I'll show you how we deal with the other ends. So the trick for weaving in the other ends is to make sure where we're weaving in is the same colour as the yarn that we're using. So say I'm weaving in this end, I'm going to weave in along the top of the same colour stitches. I'm not going to weave in down here across stitches of the other colour, because then you'll be able to see where you've woven your end in. So I'll show you how to do that. Let's just pick one of these ends. Let's go for pink. Pink is my favourite colour, so we're going to go for this pink one here. And what we're going to do is we're going to do similar to what we did here, but we're going to work in a straight line back and forth 3 times. So if I bring this up to the camera a little bit, so I'm going to work along the top of the pink stitches. I prefer to work along the backs of the stitches rather than the front. So you can see here, this is the front of the stitch, this is the back of the stitch. I prefer to work on the back. As this shawl is reversible, it doesn't really matter where you do yours. So first I'm going to run that yarn end underneath that group of that gold coloured stitches there, and then to weave along the top of here I like to pick up some loops. So I'm going to pick up that loop there, that loop there, and that loop there. Can you see how I'm kind of running it through the stitches there? That's where my needle's gone there. And then if I show you from the other side, you can't see anything. So I've buried that end in there. And then I'm going to pull the yarn tail through. And I'm going to go under the next group of the 3 gold stitches there. Like that. And then along under the next group of stitches. So this, this, this and this. This is where I like to go when I'm weaving into granny stitch here. Like that. You don't have to go here if you prefer weaving your ends in another way. Like you do you. If you prefer to knot, then you knot. I just want to show you what I'm doing because I think it gives a neat finish. And then I'm just going to go under these 3 gold stitches there. I think that's more than adequate. That's probably a bit further than I would normally weave my end in. That's probably a good 2 inches. I'd probably go usually about 1.5 there. And then we're going to work back in the same space 2 more times. We've done it once. So we're going to go back down here and then back along there. So to do that, I'm going to pick up a loop there. And then back this way. So I'm going under those stitches and then back through those loops there. Again, it doesn't massively matter where you're putting your needle here. It's just my preference. I'm going to go underneath these, and I think I'm probably going to just leave it there for now, and then I'm going to weave back one more time in that direction. So I'm just going to turn it around just because I find it easier to like move my crochet rather than my hand and my needle and swap hands. I'm going to pick up a loop here just to secure the tail. I'm going to run it along here one more time. Just like that. And once you've done a few, you can literally like just push your needle through, pick it up, push it back through the other way, pick it up, push it back through the other way, and it's done in a matter of like 20 seconds for each end. So once you get in a rhythm of it, it really becomes easy. And then if I snip this tail, hopefully you shouldn't be able to see where I have buried this end. There's the front. You can't really see it, can you? And if I turn it over, not a sign that there ever was an end there, and it's much more secure than knotting. So go ahead and do that with all of your other ends, and then come back to this tutorial and I will show you how we crochet on the border. So there's most of my ends woven in. I've left the two of the final round not woven in yet because I find it easier to weave them in once I've crocheted on the border. So let's crochet the border. For my shawl I used the colour Copper. So there are 4 rows total for this border, and the border is actually inspired by autumn leaves. So I'm going to turn this piece of crochet over, so I'm looking at the wrong side of the final row, and we're going to be joining our next colour into a different place. For this row, for row 1, we're going to be working into the tops of the stitches rather than in the spaces between the stitches like we've done up to this point. So I'm going to have a look at this side of my crochet, and this is my first stitch here. Now if I look at it from the top, we have a V shape here of yarn. That's where we're going to be working these stitches into, is underneath both of those loops of yarn at the top of each stitch there. So that's where we're going to join our first colour. So I'm going to lay my yarn over the top of my crochet hook and then pull up a loop, and I'll do that little temporary trick to stop this loop coming loose like we did before. And then for row 1, our starting chain is 1. And that doesn't count as a stitch. So up until this point we've done starting chains of 3, and that counts as a double crochet. For this row we're actually doing a row of single crochet, so that's a US single crochet. It's the same as a UK double. So a US single crochet, and for that stitch we have 1 starting chain and it doesn't count as a stitch. We're going to work 2 single crochets into this first stitch, so into that same stitch there. So if you've not made a single crochet before, we put our hook into that stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. So we've got 2 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through 2. That there is a single crochet stitch. We're going to work another single crochet into the same stitch, so back into that stitch we're going to make another single crochet, then a single crochet into the next stitch. So again we're going to find those 2 loops at the top of the stitch there, put our hook into it and do a single crochet. Next, chain 1, skip the next stitch, so this stitch here, and then single crochet in the next 2 stitches. So I'm skipping this one, doing a single crochet into the top of the stitch there, and a single crochet into the next stitch as well. And then we're going to repeat that across, so chain 1, skip 1, single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. And an easy way to remember this repeat is we're always going to be skipping that middle double crochet of our granny group of 3 double crochets here. It's always that middle stitch there that we're skipping. So continue repeating that all the way along until you reach the corner space. So I'm almost at the corner space and I've got 2 stitches left unworked. I've just done a chain 1 and a skip 1, but we can't do 2 single crochets here, so we're just going to do a single crochet into that last stitch before the corner group. The corner space, sorry, not the corner group. So into the next corner space we're going to be working a different corner group than we've done in the main part of the shawl. We're going to do 1 single crochet into the chain 2 space, then chain 2 to make the corner, and then a single crochet back into the same corner space there. So that's our corner group done. Next, work a single crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, and then we're going to do that repeat all the way along this side again. So chain 1, skip 1, single crochet in the next 2 stitches all the way along until you reach these final few stitches, and I'll meet you there. So I've got 3 stitches left. I've just done 2 single crochets. I'm going to chain 1, skip 1, single crochet in the next stitch, and our last stitch is the turning chain from row, it will be 48 for you when you're working this shawl, so from this row here, and into the top of that starting chain, so in there, we're going to work 2 single crochets. So I'm putting my hook in there, and I'm going to make 2 single crochets into that space. 1, and that's the end of row 1. We're not going to be cutting our yarn here. So now on to the second row of the border, and this second row is quite similar to the main body of the shawl. So start by chaining 3, 1, 2, 3, that counts as your first double crochet stitch. Then turn your crochet over. So work 3 double crochets all into this first stitch here. So we're going in the tops of the stitch again, going in that stitch there underneath those 2 loops. That's what it looks like from the front where I'm putting my hook. And we're going to make 3 double crochets in that stitch. So 1, 2, 3. So this is the point where it's quite similar to the previous rows. So we're going to skip the next 2 single crochets, and in that chain 1 space there, we're going to work a granny group, so 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. And repeat that all the way across to the corner space, working 3 double crochets into each space. And then when you get to your corner space, you're actually going to be making the same corner group as we've done in the main body of the shawl. So those 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. And then you're going to continue along the second side of the shawl, working 3 double crochets into each chain 1 space, skipping all the single crochets. So go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you at the end of the round over here. So I'm almost at the end of the row, and I've just done a group of 3 double crochet into the last chain 1 space of the row, and I've got 3 stitches left unworked. We're going to skip these first 2 stitches and into this final stitch of the row. So that's the first single crochet of the row below. So I'm going to be putting my hook into my crochet there, and into that stitch we're going to work 4 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's the end of the second row of the border. To start row 3 of the border, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, that counts as your first double crochet stitch, then turn your crochet over. We're going to work something called a V-stitch into the top of this first stitch here. So in that stitch there we're going to make a V-stitch. So a V-stitch is made up of a double crochet, a chain 1 and a double crochet all worked into the same stitch. So I'm going to work a double crochet into that first stitch, chain 1, and then a double crochet back into the same stitch. And hopefully you can see there that that now looks like a V shape, which is why it's called a V stitch, those 2 stitches there. So we're going to be working V stitches throughout this row. So we're going to skip the next 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and then into the space between these 2 granny groups. So just like we did in the main body of the shawl, we worked in these spaces down here. We're going to do the same in this row. We're going into that space there to make a V stitch, and we're going to repeat this across. So I'm going to do a V stitch in this space. That's a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in the same space, just like that. So repeat that all the way along until you get to your corner space, and I'll meet you there. So I've worked those V stitches in the spaces all the way along to the corner, and for this row our corner group is going to be a V stitch, chain 2, V stitch all into the corner space. So let's work that together. So a double crochet in the chain 2 space, chain 1, double crochet back into that chain 2 space, then chain 2 to make the corner, 1, 2, and then another V stitch back into that chain 2 space. double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. So that's what the corner looks like. And then we're going to do V stitches in each of the spaces all the way across until this final space, and I'll meet you here. So I've continued working those V stitches in all the spaces, and I've got 4 stitches left unworked. So to end this row, I'm going to skip 3 stitches, so skip, 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 and in this last stitch here, which is the turning chain from the row below, we're going to work a V stitch and then a double crochet. So let's do that together. So I'm going to do a double crochet into the top of that starting chain, chain 1, double crochet back into the same stitch, and then straight after that another double crochet back into that same stitch. And that's the end of border row 3. So this final row is probably the most complicated of all of the rows of this shawl so far, so I'm going to take it really slow and go through it in depth and show you the special stitches a couple of times. So the first thing we need to do is work out where we're going to be working into, because when my testers originally tested the blanket version of this shawl pattern, because this shawl is actually based on a blanket that I've got a tutorial and a pattern for, when they did that they got a little bit confused about where they do their stitches on this border. So I'm just going to grab a needle so I can point. So I'm actually just going to turn my crochet over because this is actually the way we're going to be looking as we crochet with the backs of our stitches. So I'm going to take my hook out as well just so I can show you. So if we have a look here, we have got our V stitches here. So that there is our V stitch. We've got double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. But we've got quite a few different stitches, spaces here we could be working into. So for this row, we're going to be working into the chain 1 spaces here. So that is the chain 1 of the V stitches. We are not going into this stitch here, and we're definitely not going into the space between the V stitches down here. We're going to be working into these chain 1 spaces, skipping these spaces here. So I am going to show you how we do that, but I just thought it was an important point to make, because more than one tester of the original blanket pattern did make that mistake. So yeah, let's get on with row 4 of the border. So we're going to start with a chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm going to turn my crochet back over. So we now need to look at our chain of 5, and we're going to work a slip stitch in the 3rd chain from the hook. So that's the 1st, 2nd, 3rd chain from the hook. So this chain here, we're going to make a slip stitch. It doesn't really matter which bit of the chain you make this slip stitch into. I'm just going to go in there. I'm going to make a slip stitch. So what this chain and this slip stitch are pretending to be is they are this down here, these first 3 chains, that counts as our first double crochet stitch, and then this little slip stitched bit of chain up here counts as something called a picot stitch. And I am going to show you that picot stitch in this row, but this is our pretend picot stitch here. So next we're going to work 3 double crochets into the first stitch of the row. So this stitch here, we're going to work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Then single crochet in the next chain 1 space, so in that chain 1 space there. So that's between, if we've got our first stitch, second stitch, chain 1 space, and the 3rd stitch, we're going in that space there to make a single crochet. Then we're going to skip 2 stitches, so skip, skip, skipping this space down here, and into the next chain 1 space we're going to make what I call in the written pattern a shell. That was just for kind of like ease of writing the pattern, but I'll break that down for you. So we're going to do 3 double crochets, something called a picot stitch, and then 3 more double crochets all into this chain 1 space. So let's work that together. So 3 double crochets, 1, 2, 3. Then to make a picot stitch, chain 2, 1, 2. Then we're going to make a slip stitch into the front 2 legs of the last stitch. That sounds complicated, but it's actually easier than it sounds. We're going to be putting our hook under this loop and this loop here. We're going to make a slip stitch there. So that, what we've made there, that little point, is called a picot stitch. Then we're going to work 3 double crochets back into that same chain 1 space. 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to skip 2 stitches and we're going to repeat that along. So we're going to do a single crochet into the next chain 1 space. So skip, skip, single crochet. Then skip, skip, and we're going to work a shell into the next stitch. So that's 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Then a picot, so that chain 2, I'll take it slowly for you. So chain 2, I'm going to put my hook in the front 2 legs of the last stitch. So I'm going under that loop there, and then that loop there, to make a slip stitch. There's our picot. Then 3 double crochets back into that same chain 1 space. So 1, 2, 3. So you're going to keep repeating that single crochet in the next chain 1 space and then the shell in the chain 1 space after that, all the way along until your next space is the corner space, and I'm going to meet you there and I'll show you what we're doing differently in this corner. So continued working along until I've reached a corner space. You should have just worked a single crochet in the last chain 1 space of the last V-stitch before that chain 2 corner space. So into this corner space we're going to be doing a slightly larger version of this shell here. So rather than doing 3 double crochets, picot, 3 double crochets, we're doing 4 double crochets, picot, 4 double crochets. So let's do that. I'm going to do 1 double crochet, 2, 3, 4, and then that picot, 1, 2, and the slip stitch in the same spot as before. Then 4 double crochets back into that chain 2 space, and I'm just going to speed this up for you. So that's what your corner group looks like, and this is the bit I think looks like an autumn leaf, like the edge of a leaf. So now we're going to continue working the smaller shells along this side. So the only place we do the 4 double crochet picot, 4 double crochet shell, the large shell is in the corner space. All of our other shells are the smaller shells with 3 double crochets, picots, 3 double crochets. So we're going to do a single crochet in the next chain 1 space, and then that normal shell in the next chain 1 space, just like we did along this side. So continue repeating that all the way along, and I'll meet you at the end of the row and I'll show you how we finally finish this shawl. So I've continued working along and I've just worked a single crochet in the last chain 1 space of the row. And to finish off this row we're going to be doing a kind of half shell. We're going to be doing it into the last stitch, which is the top of the turning chain from the row below. So we're going to work 3 double crochets into the top of that stitch. 1, 2, 3, then a picot, chain 2 and slip stitch. And then to finish off, 1 double crochet back into the same stitch as your edge stitch. And now we can fasten off. And then weave in your ends, and I strongly recommend blocking your shawl. It will improve the drape and it will feel so much better when you're wearing it. If you've never blocked crochet before, I have a video all about that I'll link on your screen here. And if you do know what you're doing with blocking, then I'll link a playlist over here with some more crochet tutorials you might like to try next. I'll see you again next week for another video.